der zentralen Position. Nur Schwarze hat er vor sich. Dann ist es Fjørtoft. Er ist im Strafraum. Und der Bild. Tor! Tor! Für die Frankfurter Eintracht. 5:1.
Hi and welcome to the German Fußball podcast. Another Bundesliga weekend filled with exciting results and to analyze. And as always, joined by Dad, who is so committed to this podcast that he now finds himself in Germany just to give us that authentic feel. Isn't that right, Dad?
Yes, I guess when we say what we've done this last week, I think you should start, but I can start as the elder. I've been in the weekend. I went to City against Leeds, which was decisive game in the terms of the Premier League trophy. And Erling Haaland gives the ball away to Gundogan. Seems like a great thing to do, generous thing to do. Was it Alan Shearer who said, it's a good story because it's with Alan Shearer. During the game, after he'd done that and they play on, I got a text from Ståle Solbakken, the Norwegian national coach, and he said, yeah, and Alan Shearer wouldn't have done that even if they were 10-0 up, or you wouldn't have done it anyway. And at match of the day later, first of all, Alan Shearer said, I tweeted him and he said, correct, he wouldn't have done that. And the match of the day, he said that there was a young guy came on, I think they were 7-0 up. I said, can I take the penalty? And he said, I told him 2 words, and the second word is off. So quite clear, generous. So then Leeds scored out of nothing, which was 5 minutes there. You never know what happened in football. Those could be the 2 points that Manchester City would have missed in the title race. And talking about the title race, then the next day I went up to Newcastle. I played for Middlesbrough. I played in a time when we had Middlesbrough, Sunderland, and Newcastle in the Premier League. Very passionate fans. I think that would be the Northeast will be the most passionate region of whole England in terms of the fan culture. And even as a Middlesbrough supporter, I got to say that Newcastle is something, St. James's is something special. And something special, wow, Martin Ødegaard, our friend Martin Ødegaard, he was brilliant. And I like the new Arsenal, Marcus, with a bit cynical element to the game. And I asked Martin first, I had an interview afterwards about that. And he said, yeah, we had another approach to this game, which we saw, and he confirmed that. And then I asked Arteta, when we remember the great Arsenal teams, we always think of beauty. But we do forget that in that team was also Tony Adams, Steve Bull, Martin Keown, Patrick Vieira. There was some steel in there. And Arteta just said, yeah, we have to do that. Shall we be champions? So I think they've learned this season. So that is good for Arsenal fans like you, Marcus. Mm-hmm. Although the Arsenal shirt is not behind you, I can see a Sheffield United shirt. I can see a different shirt there, even Eintracht Frankfurt. But tell us about your week.
Well, I spent the last week in Kansas, Dad. So, and I came back yesterday. So, admittedly, if I look a bit squinty-eyed, it's the jet lag. But no, I've been able to follow the Bundesliga, obviously, in the Premier League. But I wanted to. You mentioned there a couple of things. One being, Martin Ødegaard and Erling Haaland, and the tweet that you reshared yesterday with Norway having the 3rd most goal contributions in the Premier League is astonishing. If only we could translate that to the national team and see them in a championship, which we haven't done since the year 2000, believe it or not. But with Erling Haaland there giving away the penalty, in essence, it's such a selfless act, and it seems like such a great way to get everyone on board, and Gundogan could get his first career hat-trick, etc., and how fantastic he's been and what a signing he has been from Borussia Dortmund a while ago. But as a striker, then he's got 35 goals, and he could go down as the greatest goal scorer of all time, Dad. And he has that kind of focus, single-man focus, score. How do you see that? Because you can see both sides, right?
Yeah, and I will name drop all my interviews because I had great interviews at Etihad. I had Gundogan too. I had Guardiola. And Guardiola wanted to be generous, says everything about Erling as a person. Erling could have missed that penalty too, and blah, 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 blah. And I quite literally said to him, yeah, well, it's easy to be generous now, but those minutes you were sitting there thinking, wow, it could be 2-2. He wouldn't be that generous. But I think that, Marcus, it says a lot about the personality of Erling Haaland, because I looked at that situation, because I saw it straight away that he kind of would have done that. You can say, I've said that before, he always praised everybody else when they score, even more than he scored himself. You can say that because of that attitude, he gets more from his teammates as well. So maybe if you do the budget, if you do the plus and minuses, you will end up with more pluses. That being said, I interviewed Gundogan, and he said, as you said, well, I've never scored a hat-trick in my life, and blah, 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 blah. And we were talking about it, and I like Gundogan. He's a brilliant personality. And then I said, yeah, but even you guys, big stars, you got to be nervous out there when you know that you missed that penalty, a lead score. And he said, yes, of course we did. And then I, because you haven't used your education and got one of those Wall Street jobs to follow my footstep at PFA, I think that you will like the trick that I did after 2 questions, 2 answers. I said, okay, we restart the interviews all live. And I said, we restarted. No, we just talk about the positive thing. Congratulations on your win. Congratulations on your 2 goals. So, yes, Marcus, I think that says a lot about Erling Haaland. I think that he could have broken his own record, getting 36 Premier League goals. So I said after the game that Dixie Dean would have probably done that like this if he was alive. But Dixie Dean played the end of the 20th for Everton. So now, great day for the Norwegians. And if people are wondering, the English players have scored most. There are some English players playing in the Premier League as well. 2 is Brazil. Then is Norway. And if I remember right, it was Portugal and Brazil. Now, Portugal and Argentina on the next places.
It's not a bad list to be a part of.
No, absolutely.
Let's get into the Bundesliga, that, because we have, we still have it very much open, both top and bottom. As we always do, I think we should start with Bayern and Dortmund. But you've discussed a bit. You've been a bit active discussing both Kahn and Bellingham. You came out with the Kahn report, and there was a lot of attention surrounding that. What is the latest when it comes to Kahn and the CEO position?
Well, I tweeted the morning after the Bayern City game that Oliver Kahn, they tried to replace him at Bayern. They tried to replace him. And in that process, I got people from, I guess, all media outlets in Germany to have me on. And I choose to go on to our friend Christian Falk, who is doing his Bayern Insider. I did it there, and I haven't said anything for 3 weeks. What it is when things like this happening, and if you are the first one, people tend to call you and give you more information. But I thought that was right to keep that quiet. I had to verify it. I had to check that out. What I do know that I tweeted the other day is that, yes, Bayern do want to replace Oliver Kahn. They have delayed their big meeting that should be the 22nd of May, which would have been the Monday before the last game of the season. They said that was just a normal meeting. It wasn't that normal, because now they extended it to delayed it to after the last game of the season. Do I know if Oliver Kahn will keep on being a Bayern boss after that meeting? No, I don't know that. But I do know that they look for a replacement. I also know that 4 persons have rejected him. I also know that the Bayern CEO, Axel Hellmann, who is one of the best in the industry, was a bigger candidate, or a most likely candidate than people thought. And I also know that there could be a kind of interim CEO, being Herbert Heiner, who is now the president of Bayern, will go into the role as interim CEO. He is a good friend of Uli Hoeneß. And mark this, Marcus, Uli Hoeneß hasn't said a word yet in 3 weeks. Oliver Kahn said, irgendeiner, someone tweeted something. So you can from now on call me someone, tweeted something. So that is that. And if I go to because I'm in Germany now, Marcus, and I just show you the headline on Glasner, the Bayern, the Eintracht Frankfurt coach, saying Krisegipfel mit Glasner. So they had a crisis meeting with Glasner, and they say that the Eintracht coach, he will end his time at Eintracht Frankfurt after the Cup final. We'll see what's happening. There were even talk about him doing that as quick as possible, that he will leave now, because they've had 10 games in the Bundesliga without
10
a win?
games, yes, 10 winless.
Yeah, 10 winless games. And I will follow that up, because, of course, the press in Germany or in Frankfurt want me to talk about this. And I just did it before. It's a Tuesday afternoon now, Marcus. And I just told them they should be aware of what they wish, because I think that Glasner would be a perfect candidate if they look for a coach now. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that Eintracht Frankfurt has been good at picking coaches. They had Niko Kovac, then he left for Bayern. Then they got Adi Hütter that came in and did well for them. And then Glasner came in. And it's only 6 months ago that they were in the Champions League. It's only 2 weeks till they are in the Pokalfinale. They can't have as many titles as Bayern this season. So it's an interesting thing, Marcus.
Yeah, and with Glasner, he had a what can we call it? A tirade at the press conference, and he was correct me if I'm wrong, if my German is not mistaken, but he was referencing Hasebe, who was 39 years old, who was playing center back, and he said, I think they've been questioned about the willingness to win from the team, and he said, I got Hasebe who's starting X, games in a row, and he's pissing blood, etc., etc. And going on this, he got sent off during the game. He kicked on a ball, a second ball onto the field in protest of a drop that had been done, and overall losing against Hoffenheim, and now 10 games without a win. On one hand, it seems like Glasner has done everything he could with Eintracht, as well as, it is being a coach is a demanding job at that. Champions League only, winning the Europa League last season. Is it could it be a suitable time for him to end in it? Is it maybe good for himself as well, as he's maybe mounting the pressure and the demands?
Yeah, well said. And yeah, I see where you're coming from on that one. And I say, sometimes I have to put my hat on as a football expert, football pundit, and sometimes as an Eintracht fan, and also someone who knows the people involved. And I'm glad that Markus Krösche, Axel Hellmann are still in charge. Axel Hellmann turned down the Bundesliga, turned down Bayern. He said, I want to stay at Eintracht. I think that is good. But said it in a way of people understand it. Glasner lost it big time in Hoffenheim, and the pressure got to him. First of all, that drop situation, he just kicked the ball on the pitch and thought he would get a yellow. I didn't know that rule, and he was sent off. So he's getting one game suspended now. Then he had this with Hasebe. Hasebe is 80 years of age. I mean, he is around 40, and he's a unbelievable character. So I do understand where he came from. But I also heard the question at the press conference was quite mild. There was no reason for him to do that. But having said that, Marcus, there is a pressure, unbelievable pressure. And I think that you are just between that thing that you have to live with the pressure. And I think also Glasner will think the same as I do. Well, 6 months ago, we played in the Champions League final. 1 year ago, I won the Europa League with this club. 2 weeks, I'm playing the Pokalfinale, the cup final. And we don't know the conversations been inside of Eintracht anyway, the internal discussion. So we will be clear on this. We will follow this closely, because something could happen. I must but say, one of the reasons I do is a bit skeptical. Why? Because if they needed a coach, they would have brought in a guy like Glasner. That's my point, because with his character. And now there is candidates who are like Dino Topmöller. They've never been coached for a team before. So I'm not saying Dino Topmöller, who was the assistant manager of Julian Nagelsmann, could do a great job. Even his dad played at Eintracht Frankfurt and blah, 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 blah. There's nothing to do with that. But I think that you, as a club, you should be aware of what you wish for. But then again, we don't know the demands inside. We also don't know the discussion. Let's put it this way. Football expert Åge Fjørtoft don't know about that. So let's see what happens. Just before we go to the duel in the top, Marcus, I also want to show you this front page.
About that.
Jude Bellingham. generally they're saying that, remember Liverpool jumped off. They were a favorite to get him. The relation between Klopp and Watzke, Dortmund, very good, and so on. But it seems where everything pointed at, looks like Bellingham will go to Real Madrid. He will go to Spain. Dortmund, they got it in their own hands. It's a bit under-communicated because if you compare it with Erling Haaland, he had a clause, so that was up to Erling if he wants to leave. But with Bellingham, he has a contract. He has a contract till 2025, meaning that Dortmund could keep him if they want to. So what they've done, I think they will think maybe you can stay for one more year. You're a young lad and so on. So they're offering 14 million euro a season. That is what Bild reporting. You extend your contract with 1 year. But it seems that they go to Real Madrid, and Bild are reporting that he will get 20 million there. He will be the second best paid player after Hazard, who hasn't played a game more or less. And they want 150 million euro for him. So that is the latest stand on Jude Bellingham. And there's a lot of speculation in Germany now, 3 games to go. When will he make that public? If I was Team Bellingham, I would wait to do after the season because it's so tense now with 3 games to go. And Marcus, then it was the bridge to the Bayern Dortmund. You watched it as well.
Yes, exactly. Dortmund, unbelievable at home this season. Unbelievable. And don't forget, I mean, the defending from Wolfsburg was like some of the goals against was terrible.
Surprisingly, because that is Kovac, and they'll be so tight at the back.
And Wolfsburg are an informed team. Let's not forget, like Dortmund made Wolfsburg look silly, but Wolfsburg had very much the incentive of going after this game because they're chasing European places, Europa League places. And so considering how we discussed Wolfsburg in the beginning of the season, you remember that when they started really, really poorly, Kovac shows with time what he could do with that team. Dortmund, fantastic. Adeyemi had a leap on him on that first goal, which took me by surprise. Bellingham, 2 goals. Can we count the second? But either way, it was a unique goal. And then up against a Bayern team, Dad, who win against Werder Bremen. Werder Bremen without Nico Füllkrug. And still not convincingly, I would say. I mean, they had control in a sense, but there were moments of danger. So I'm not entirely convinced that either team will win their last 3 games. And I think that makes it even all the more exciting.
It is, absolutely. And you say the home form will be vital here. But Dortmund is going to Augsburg. I got a feeling you're going to Augsburg. There's not far away from Munich. And I reminded our viewers and our listeners in the last episode when Leverkusen only should go to Unterhaching. This is like 20, 30 years ago. It's a long time ago. No, that was the year Leverkusen lost 3 finals, so sort of even the Bundesliga final, and losing. But yeah, I watched the Bayern game. I saw that live on TV. Yes, they were not convincingly, Marcus, but Dortmund, they had a gala show at home in Westfalenstadion. Bayern just did the Bayern game. And maybe that is a bit worrying because Bayern just did what they had to do. There was an hour before they scored, but still they were there. Gnabry, Leroy Sané came on. It was 9 minutes on, and he scored the second goal. Then Werder Bremen came back, but that was just Bayern going there. That was a tricky game. That was one of the places you were thinking, could they leave a point there? So that was Bayern control. I think that Dortmund still kind of think that they lost that game in Bochum, where they should have had that clearest penalty of the season that they didn't get. And if it comes down to that point, those 2 points that I missed there, that will be interesting. But Marcus, I'm with you. I don't think both teams would take 9 points each in the last 3 games. So this is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, it will be. Werder Bremen's consolation goal, Niklas Schmidt, I believe, was an incredible long-range goal. Yes, we have Dortmund against Bayern in the top, and then we also have an incredibly tight relegation battles, and with the foremost, let's just say, with one who has been involved in one of the tightest relegation battles there is, in yourself, Dad. I'm looking at the table as we speak. bear in mind, Schalke are now in a safe spot, and they had 9 points after 17 games. They now have 30 points. It's quite the job that has been quite the turnaround that's been done there. And last week, we had kind of deemed Hertha chanceless in saving a spot, and then they win, and then they're suddenly back into it. And Bochum, who had a strong result against Dortmund, are now finding themselves in the relegation spots as well. Plus, Sebastian Hoeneß and a Stuttgart, who, after losing out an Eintracht in the Pokal semi-final, found themselves losing and are now in the relegation playoff spots. I guess what we can say is, I think you got Augsburg on 34 points after 31 games, and then Stuttgart on the relegation playoff, they got 28 points. Could we say that it's between then Hoffenheim, Schalke, Stuttgart, Bochum, and Hertha, Dad? And then I guess, where do we see this going?
Well, what we learned last days, if you saw the results yesterday, when Everton going to Brighton winning 5-1, Leicester going to Craven Cottage 5-3, Nottingham Forest, not surprisingly maybe, but it's all about this to get the form at the right point now, because you can say that it equaled itself over a whole season. But the thing is now, if you take 2 wins in a row, ask Bournemouth, when you take 2 games in a row, you get 6 points, then you're out of it. Like Hoffenheim now, that they were having a good period and a bad period. Now they're winning in Frankfurt, and they get a bit space. So it's going to be an unbelievable battle, and I think that is great this season. It's not 100% who will get into the Champions League, although you start seeing some pattern there. But Marcus, just when we're landing this, after I will just have a note. People have a look at the Zweite Liga Tabelle as well. Hamburger Sportsverein always will end up third in the relegation game, and then they will lose, of course. To remind our listeners, the third last in the Bundesliga plays the third placed Zweite Liga Mannschaft, and that is always Hamburger Sportsverein. But interesting now, the teams ahead of them start to get in the nerves now, losing games, losing points. But Hamburger Sportsverein are losing 2 points as well, because they only manage a draw. But if I may, Marcus, I was at Newcastle, and as you do, I'm always early at the stadium. It's always good to meet the other pundits, all former teammates of mine or people I played to. And I spoke to one of those I most highly admire in our industry, Gary Neville, because I think it's always interesting to listen to people, how they see German football from outside. Yourself and me, we are a big fan of the Bundesliga, so sometimes you need to ask them about that. And it's interesting now, and I want to introduce a video I made with Gary Neville talking about German football, and I think people also love his relation to that game, that final in Barcelona, when they won with that Solskjaer goal against Bayern Munich, and we'll talk about more that afterwards. One of the legends of English football, and he's played a lot against German teams.
You're taller than I remember, when you played.
Go down now.
I used to have to...
Yeah, but because you play for Manchester United, I play for these clubs. You felt tall. You felt tall all the time, you did. Thanks for reminding me of that. I mean, obviously, your German game was against Bayern Munich, the Champions League final.
It was.
What's your remembrance of that game?
I don't think we played very well. I don't think Bayern Munich back then allowed you to play very well. I think we played them a number of times that season, even in the group. And every time we played them, they had big strikers. Do you remember Ali Daei, the
absolutely Iranian
player? He played for them. Janka played for them. Who was the guy that I played against on the left wing, 6'3"? Ooh. Oh, I forgot his name, German.
Yeah, we get him.
Anyway, they've got so many big players, so many strong players. It was very difficult to play against them. It was like playing against a very good Wimbledon.
They will love to hear that to Bayern.
Very good with a couple of world-class players, but they lost Elber that season, I think, earlier on in the season. Lizarazu didn't play in the final, so they lost a couple of world-class players. But in the end, we got there, but it was very fortunate. It was just by somebody up there looking down on us, because they were a strong team to play against.
And Lothar Matthäus walking off, remember that? He was taken off, wasn't he? I mean, that's the only thing he'd never won.
And Basler.
Yeah,
both of them.
We chipped the ball in there.
Yeah, a little bit celebratory. They were a little bit.
Do you think so?
Yeah, a little
Do you think
bit,
so?
Yeah, a little bit. And then Lothar Matthäus' face on the bench when the goal was in.
Yeah.
And he's like this, and he can't do anything about it because he's off. That's what happens. The Sami Kuffour on he's still the Barcelona Nou Camp pitch is still the grounds were still trying to fix the pitch.
Yeah, I played against Sami Kofur. He was a tough guy.
Very well.
We're seeing it from England. How do you see German football now? Because when they talk about German football here, it's all about getting the talents over here, isn't it?
We're a bit like that though. We're predatory, aren't we? I think your game's a lot more pure in Germany. I think there's part of what you have in Germany that we would love in England. I think from a fan perspective.
Yeah, tell about that. Tell about that.
I just think that the integration of the fans into the ownership, into the community, that's important in football. That's where football came from. And we've grown a great product over here. We have amazing football. We have so much money, it's untrue. But then you think of the purity of our game is less than it is in Germany. There's no doubt about that. But the strength of the game over here is fantastic. We've grown a modern brand. Germany has stayed true to its roots. Our game, I do feel, even though Manchester City have won the league 4 out of the last 5 times, I do feel it's more competitive across the league, and I do think that sometimes in Germany it can be a little bit anti-competitive with Bayern Munich's strength. We don't want that in any league in Europe. We don't want a situation where the same team wins all the time. We want a competitive balance all the way through, and we've got to be a little bit in control of that over here with City. But obviously with what's happening with Newcastle, Arsenal, Manchester United, Chelsea investing, it should be very competitive in the next few years. But we need regulation in this country just to monitor the clubs and the spending.
Yeah, because on the other hand, as we are speaking, we are at St. James's, we know the Saudis have taken over this club. You have the 50+1 rule in Germany, of course, but they will feel they're not competitive enough in Europe. Do you think that at the end this 50+1 rule will kind of break down and they have to get in investors too? Look, you can still have the 50+1 rule, but bring investment in. Yeah. I suppose what German football probably has to do is try and find a way of maintaining their authenticity and their approach that they've had for the last 100 years, whilst making sure they adapt to the modern market and the free market that we live in Germany and in the UK. So what they have, they shouldn't let go of, which is a strong footing, a strong foundation. But what they maybe need to do is just flex the rules slightly so that there can be some investment coming into clubs in a way which doesn't take away from the fan controls. Ownership's not important, controls are the most important thing, and you can still have a minority ownership and have the controls in place which can prevent some of the things that we don't like to see. Well said, Gary, as always. I mean, I just want to repeat, how was that face of Lothar Matthäus on the bench again? Okay, I think we end there.
And that was Gary Neville with yourself, Dad. Gary Neville, yeah, I rate him highly as a pundit, and he had a couple of funny anecdotes there and a description of Lothar Matthäus, who is your former colleague. Could you relate to that description?
Well, first of all, it's typical. He's bullying a bit, Lothar Matthäus. This is the Champions League final. They're 1-0 up Bayern. He has to walk off because he's tired. He can't play anymore. And his description of Lothar Matthäus then sitting on the bench, seeing first that Ted Sheringham is making that goal. And everybody thinks we go to extra time. Then there's a corner. I think it's Beckham to Sheringham. And then Ole Gunnar Solskjaer just doing that 2-1. And Gary Neville's kind of parody of Lothar Matthäus' face. Lothar Matthäus, one of the best players of all time, never won the Champions League, won the World Cup, won trophies everywhere. Was funny, and I guess Lothar will. I will, when I meet him the next time, I will absolutely have a go at him and try to interview him about Gary Neville. But Marcus, enjoy me like always. It's Tuesday afternoon. I'm doing a bit discussion here at Sky. I'm in Munich now. So a bit training session then. I'm going to the studio. I have to keep fit, Marcus.
Perfect. That sounds good, Dad. And we'll be back next week. And then we will follow closely the Champions League games as well. And former Dortmund striker Erling Haaland as they take on the mighty Real Madrid. So thanks for now, Dad.
Cheers. Auf Wiedersehen.